nice and windy out. Alright.
I gotta turn my...
I popped out the chat, and then it disappeared on me.
Probably went behind your screen.
Ah. Popped out the chat. Disappeared on me. Ah. Whoop. My fingers are going crazy here. There it is. I got it back.
Videos, weird things.
Hey Aaron, how you doing? I'm having fun with my little chat window today. Apparently it doesn't want to stay where it belongs. Okay, that'll work. All right, I think I'm good. The Misty System says, "Hey there, how are you doing today? Much better than when we were the last time we were here." Lady Raven Moon says, "Hello, hi, how you doing?"
Hi.
Talon says, "Greetings from Oklahoma. It's over 100 degrees outside today. Staying inside and not cooking sounds like a plan." Definitely not a good idea to be cooking in the house when it's 100 degrees out.
The video brightness is bouncing around a bit. You definitely look kind of green on my screen.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, I don't look green on mine, so I don't know how to, how to deal with it.
No, that must have to do somehow with the feed.
Violet says, "Hi,
YouTube.
family." Hi, Violet. We're definitely having a better week, though. Secrets have all been told. There are no one holding back at this point. So, and forward movement is taking place, so I'm feeling much better. Like, yes. Moon Radish says hello. Hi, Moon Radish. How you doing? Ruth says hi. Hi, Ruth.
Hey, everybody.
That was weird. Other weird things going on. Everything's decided to just be funky today. Apparently Mercury must be up to something. I don't know.
I don't know why the camera keeps adjusting the brightness, because the brightness isn't changing in the room like that.
Well, the curtain is moving, and maybe that's doing it because of the
I
wind.
don't know, it keeps going brighter and darker.
Any new evocations lately? Oh, and Misty says, "That's great to hear." And hi all. Hi, Misty System. No new evocations. That's like,
Dealing with other stuff in the meantime.
Right, that's a lot of work. And we finished making the Poppet for the Mercury being like he asked. We have one more thing to do. Ian's going to write his sister's name on it, and we're going to bring it in here into the temple so that he has access to the energy and can use the crystals that we put in there however he wants.
Yep,
So,
we have some more planned, but they're going to have to wait till life slows down enough to let us...
We're moving furniture, rearranging the house right now. So, yeah, it's been busy. Been using my back belt a lot to keep my back from getting too sore. So, Talon says, "So is there a specific topic of discussion today?"
Pick
well,
one.
I made the Poppets. Someone wrote in and wanted to talk about natural authority and how that relates to things. He was wondering like exactly how it works. I gave him the link to the video that we did about natural authority, but you know, it certainly is a broad enough subject. And he was going to watch it on playback because he can't be here for the live show. So I guess we should talk about that.
Wow. The brightness flickering is really annoying.
I can see that happening. Very weird.
It doesn't seem to have anything to do with the room. It seems to be just the camera doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's hope it doesn't mean we have to get a new camera. Guess we'll see what happens. Been one of those kinds of
because it's not
weeks.
Getting brighter and darker in here like that.
Okay, guys. Apparently I'm fading in and out of reality.
Why don't somebody pick a subject of discussion
well,
for
I
us
just
to start with?
picked one. Natural authority.
Okay.
We're going to talk about that.
All right.
So part of the question that he had was about whether or not natural authority works with all beings, or is it just like human spirits and that kind of thing, which is a good question. it's going to depend upon the spirit, I think, as to the answer. Because, like, if it's a nature spirit, I mean, you can set boundaries. It's kind of like working with cats. You know, you make sure that your boundaries are in place, you know what they are. If someone violates the boundary, you call them on it, you remind them that there's a boundary, then they respect the boundary and you move on, that kind of thing. That's why we talk about personal boundaries so often, because that kind of sense of boundaries is one of the things that gives us that natural authority and ability to determine what is and is not allowed into our personal space. But if it's a non-human, pre-human kind of spirit being, it's going to depend on what type.
It may very well react with an animalistic nature, so there's a limited understanding depending on how low you get on the scale.
And you know, if it is sort of a wildish type of energy, you want to use caution in how you use your natural authority, because you know, if you met a bear on the trail, you could yell at the bear and tell it to go away, and it might eat your head. I mean, you know, so. But certainly, my experiences with natural authority, when something is attacking me, like the first one I experienced when I was young, I had no question that it had to do what I said and leave me alone, all of them, and that they would be in trouble if they didn't. And so that idea of knowing that you have it, I'm not sure why the people in the paranormal shows don't tell anyone about that. He specifically mentioned the dead files, and they never tell anyone that they have authority over the spirits in their house. It's always maybe we can help, maybe we can't, or maybe you have to live with it, or maybe you have to move.
Bye, Talon. Sorry. Talon has to go.
Oh, sorry. And thank you, Roxanne. I appreciate that. So Talon says, damn it, gotta run. A client with 5 dogs just got out of her car heading towards my clinic. I will catch the upload later. This client's going to take some time with that many dogs. Oh, well, I'm glad that they have Talon on their side. Iwu says, hi, everyone. Hi, Iwu. Iwi? Iwi. Not Iwu, Iwi.
Right.
Ew. Well, ew, you know, like EWE is like, you know, a female sheep, a ewe. So who knows? I guess we can pronounce it however we want. Balloon Head says hi. Hi, Balloon Head. People have the most interesting names. I like the variety. And thanks for all the little, what do you call those?
Emojis.
Emojis, thank you. Brain. Not on topic. So, not sure what else to say about the natural authority is, you know, more specifically, but it is true that you have to know that you have it. You have to believe that you have it in order for it to work. But I've used it with children when I've done paranormal investigations and children are afraid, and teach them that they have this ability to make a spirit leave them alone, and that they can use imagery in order to, like, make them go away and protect themselves, learn different techniques for, you know, like imagining their favorite toy stacked all the way around them or what have you, that nothing could break. So shielding kind of stuff. Angela says, hi, Siofra, Chat, and Violet. How are you all? We're pretty good. Makes no difference how you pronounce my name. Oh, Joy says, speaking about cats, I'd like to hear more about Ian's experience when he turned into one that he mentioned last week.
Tuned into one.
Well, okay, tuned, not turned.
Yeah, that was my cat Jasmine, and she was pretty much my cat as far as attachment went. She focused on me, and she was a wonderful cat, so I really loved this kitty cat, so I thought I would try to make contact with her consciousness. So I worked on it for a while, and when I did, one of the things I've noticed when you really succeed at something like that is always there's a certain shock to the system. In this case, it was a shock to the system of how our cat viewed herself. She was like this, saw herself as this eating tube with claws and teeth and stuff, and to attack and eat things, and that seemed to be the only You know, the only thing I made contact with, in practice, she was very affectionate and a very loving cat. And she went and laid down by me and kept me company when I was sick and made me feel better. And it was a really close relationship. But it was the idea of that shock. It's totally alien. I mean, there's nothing human about a cat consciousness. And it was a kind of a shock to experience that. There wasn't anything bad there. It was just so alien. It was startling and a bit frightening just to face something that totally alien to human consciousness. But yeah, it wasn't anything bad in that sense. It was just very shocking. The first time you really make a contact like that, and it's not human.
I certainly think that lends validity to the experience, because it certainly wasn't what you would have projected
Right,
into the cat with the relationship that you had with her,
yeah.
with all the lovey, warm feelings and everything that
Yep.
you experienced with her. Yeah. So Angela says, I love your outfits. So Siofra, thank you. Lady Raven says, just don't show fear. Be very confident in your authority. Absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, if you show fear, they know it. And the idea is to not just not show fear, but not actually feel fear. Because that's the goal, that you don't have to be afraid. Angela says, I heard in ancient Egypt that cats never had people names because they were considered not pets but sovereign creatures who came and went as they want. And a deep connection to Bastet.
I hadn't heard that before, but it doesn't surprise me either at all.
Doesn't surprise me either. Balloonhead says, I like Balloonhead because I have ADHD and I feel highly ungrounded most of the time, like my head is in the clouds. Oh, that
Cool.
sounds interesting. Yes. So Night Wandering Daughter says, Merry meet everyone. Got here late. Glad to be here. I usually catch these lives after they've already happened.
Well,
You're not
very
late. You're right on time. You know, it's like we've just gotten started and it's only been like 10 minutes or so. So enjoy. You're here. It's good. Everything's good. Angela says, Merry meet. Beautiful name, by the way. Night Wandering Daughter. Yeah, it's kind of nice. Yeah, we have a good group that comes to visit us on Sundays. It brightens our week, for sure. We enjoy it. We enjoy our conversations. Angela says, a witch or wizard is never late. We arrive exactly when we're meant to. Sounds like a good excuse. Something you can use. I'm on wizard time. The universe sent me to be here right now. Because yes, time is just the fabric of our imagination and an artifice in the first place, and really has no meaning since all time is now. So I've always been here, and I've never been here, so there. I have always been here, and I never arrived. Never been around. Yeah. So I thought making the poppets was interesting. I may have had a poisoning from making the poppets, but we're not sure, because the afternoon I made them, that night I woke up with my usual kind of cramps and had to get up and walk. And then when I finished walking out my spasms and sat down, I suddenly had what is typically called a panic attack. We're talking sweating and weird breathing, feeling brain was strange. I even woke Ian up out of bed to come out at 3 o'clock in the morning to sit with me, because I wasn't sure if I was having a heart attack or a stroke or a panic attack or what. And then the next day, I started researching some of the plants I put in the poppet, and Delphinium apparently has digitalis in it. And I was handling the Delphinium with my fingers. So we're still not sure if that was it or if it was something else unrelated. But I did learn about my plant in the process. So, Joyce C. says, Lord of the Rings quote. Right, Gandalf said that. Violet says, ha, wizardry. Angela says, we made time a penalty game by giving ourselves late punishments, I think. Yeah. Angela says, yes, Joy, it is ×3, but it's applicable one. Yeah, I just actually started rewatching The Hobbit. I watched the first movie, now the second movie, and I have the third movie to do. I was just in the mood for some Middle Earth stuff and shenanigans. But yeah, I was very excited when those movies came out, when they finally made them right as far as the books were concerned. I actually read the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy to my kids as a bedtime story. That took a year or more, I believe. How fun, Tolkien time. Yes. He was certainly an interesting individual. I think writers are marvelous. There's so many good ideas and things out there nowadays. Angela says, it can be super depleting doing doll magic and stuffy magic sometimes. I do it very often, but I've never had that happen. Perhaps it was something in them. I tend to use crystals in my dolls and plushes. Well, I had a lot of crystals in there too. But I don't know. It didn't seem to be a crystal related thing.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it was probably the stuff, depending. It take a while to absorb into your skin.
Yeah, I don't know.
If nothing else, might have been a panic attack.
It could have been. I've had one previously that wasn't related to anything I touched, as far as we know. I'm just not prone to them, or haven't been in the past, but bodies change. You never know. We have definitely been under a certain amount of stress lately, if it was related to life. So Balloonhead says, have you guys ever listened to Hello from the Magic Tavern?
Nope.
Apparently no. Angela says, among other things, yes. So yeah, I don't know. It was weird though. Made me think that they should have warnings on all the plants that are poisonous and toxic that you buy at the garden center, so that you know, instead of making everybody have to look everything up in order to find out.
I agree. If you buy foxglove or something, it should have a warning not to
and there
handle
isn't.
it without.
We just went to the store and there's tons of foxglove there. There's no warning on any of it, and we know how toxic that is. So Night Wandering Daughter says, Siofra, I wondered if you might be having some kind of reaction while making the poppet when you thought something was crawling on you. That's right. I did have that. How did you resolve it? Love those colors on you, by the way. Thank you very much. We just waited until it was over and I didn't have to go to the hospital or call an ambulance. As far as I know. Yeah, the funny feeling of something touching me stayed with me for about a half an hour afterwards, I think. Every so often, it felt like I had little things like crawling on my skin or something. I kept brushing it, but then it finally faded away, so. Violet says, what? Magic Tavern, a podcast, question mark? Angela says, Buttercups too. Buttercups? Oh, I used to play with those all the time. You know, you pick them up and put them underneath your chin to see if they glow, if your chin glows yellow. I never knew that. Balloon has, it's a silly podcast set in Middle Earth. Ah, I see. Violet says, oh, thanks, Balloonhead. Balloonhead says, no problem, Violet Star. You says, plants should have warning labels for animal safety too. Yeah, and essential oils. So many are toxic to our animal friends. Yeah. That's a very true thing. I agree completely. I see a lot of people asking questions about that in different forums that I'm in. So the Allura Valor says, Merry Meet. Hi, Allura. Joy says, Clematis is bad to touch too. Yeah, someone gave me a fairly comprehensive list. Mark, our friend from Ashland, he gave me a list like this long on my Facebook post about it, mentioning all these different plants. So always search before you plant. I'm like, yeah, but why is it always our responsibility to figure this stuff out? The people that are selling them, you have to put warnings on your food if there's allergens in them.
Well, I like the warning idea, but you have to watch out. They might all decide they need to make them all illegal.
I don't know. Angela says, I used to do that with dandelions, tickle myself with them, but yes, buttercups are toxic. Joy says, oh good, I'll look for it. Okay then. There's definitely a lot of things you should use gloves for when you're gardening. Around here, foxglove grows wild. It's in the woods everywhere, along with a bunch of other deadly plants like deadly nightshade and hemlock.
I think monkshood too grows around here.
Yeah, I think it does.
Which is basically about the same as foxglove as far as the way what it has in it. Looks a pretty blue color, but otherwise it's
It
pretty much
is.
the same. Yeah.
They're all pretty colors. The Delphinium is a gorgeous blue. That's why I like it. There's not as many blue flowers in the spectrum, and apparently, maybe blue is an indication. Well, foxgloves aren't blue, so maybe not. I don't know. But plants are interesting.
Mushrooms bruise blue if they're psilocybin.
True. We've been
Not that
watching.
relates to anything.
We've been watching the Netflix documentary about how to change your mind, which has certainly been very interesting with the new research that they've been doing. Angela says, I used to take gloves and gather wild sumac leaves and dry them, but then people put grass down where the sumac grew. Sumac is definitely not good to touch with your fingers. Lots of rashes from that. Poison oak, poison ivy. I always have seen pictures of sumac, but I've never actually found any.
I'll tell you what, I did something once, ended up camping and forgot flashlights entirely, and it was one of these totally dark, absolutely dark nights. So I started a fire, and it turned out, once I got it going, it ended up having a whole lot of poison oak in it, which I understand the smoke could have like got in your eyes and got the stuff in your eyes and your mouth and stuff, and got lucky.
Lucky.
Yep.
You don't want it in your throat and your lungs.
You do not want to.
Allura says, psilocybin, my favorite. And Angela says, oh no, yes, oh no. I had my own experience with poison ivy. When I was a kid, I was immune to it for years. It was 6th grade, apparently, was the year I became no longer immune. And it was fall, and one of my favorite rocks that I used to climb, big, huge thing. It had nice little places to hold on all over the place. I used to climb that thing constantly. Was covered with poison ivy, and I never worried about it because it never bothered me before. And they're more potent, the oils, in the fall. And I came home, and I had like little bright cheeks when I came home. And then I woke up in the morning, and my whole head, I was covered with the poison ivy, and was all swollen up, and my eyes were swollen shut. I ended up in the hospital because it was down my throat, and they were afraid I was going to stop breathing. So yeah, that was certainly interesting.
Which is actually an interesting thing, because when I was a kid, I never tried it, thank God, but there's this rumor floating around that the way to get immune to poison oak was to eat a big sprig of it.
I thought it was little pieces, not giant ones, but
well, either way,
yeah, either way, it seems like a bad night.
Yeah, I mean, God, I wonder how many kids, because of that thing, ended up with it down their throat.
Yeah, it's not a good thing to do. And Angela says, yeah, don't burn that. I luckily have never met poison ivy. My daughter got poison oak really bad when we were in California, and they gave her like cortisone pills, I guess, to reduce the inflammation. As soon as that was finished, it came back like as bad or worse than it had been. And I got her the homeopathic remedy, Highlands, for poison ivy and poison oak, and boy, did that work on her. I don't find all of their remedies work, but that worked so well on her. It's like, if anyone gets it, I'm instantly trying to hand out some Highlands to them, because the homeopathic stuff, it's like there's questions about how effective it might be, and it's like anything else. It works really well for some people, and that definitely worked better than anything the doctors gave them. So that's my little thing there. Angela says that would taste terrible. The oils in those plants make them bitter like the ladybug. Oh yeah, I remember the ladybug. I don't want to eat one of them. Yes. Annie says, if anyone's in the UK, the poison garden is pretty cool. I haven't been, but friends have, full of poisonous plants, tour guided only, though for obvious reasons, and no touchy. Yeah, I've read about the poison garden and seen some pictures of it. It looks phenomenal, but yes, it looks like it would be definitely, you really need to have a guide, and definitely don't touch anything, because some of those plants are probably extremely toxic.
Yeah, of course we've got all the deadly mushrooms around here, the death caps, the ones they call the destroying angels, all Amanita varieties.
Yeah, there's a lot of mushrooms on the coast. knowing your mushrooms is important if you're going to eat them. But that was how I got introduced to silymarin, and which is the
Milk
active
thistle.
ingredient in milk thistle, and it's very protective of the liver and stuff. And they actually had a poisoning, a mass poisoning, I think in England, where some people cooked up a batch of mushrooms for spaghetti and all ate them, and they were all in the process of declining and having total liver failure, and they put them on milk thistle and nobody died, which was pretty remarkable. They decided for humanitarian reasons they would not have a control group. Thank goodness. Yeah, Annie says, I wouldn't want to be their risk assessment person. Yeah. Angela says, the one with the red cap and white dots grows further up in the mountains from me. It's called fly Amanita. It only grows under certain pine trees and only when nature allows. It can't be farmed. I've never found one. If I did, I wouldn't pick it. I'd just be super happy. Yeah, they're certainly pretty to look at.
They grow
all over
here.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Sorry, yeah. You just walk across the road to the park and get some.
Angela says, I only pick flowers when there's an abundance of them. Same with mushrooms. Well, yeah, I mean, people who pick mushrooms for a living, like pine mushrooms and so forth, are good about making sure that more mushrooms will be growing there later, because if you pick them all and don't leave some to spore, then you just killed the spot, which doesn't make any sense. So they're mostly pretty sensible, especially some of those mushrooms get a good price per pound.
I've heard, but I've never been brave enough to try, that you can use those Amanita muscarias, the fly Amanitas, if you boil them in water, but it sounds like it's very dangerous because you get a lot of bad symptoms along with it. So I wouldn't advise those, but
we're not recommending you go around eating any mushrooms or poisonous plants. Let's clarify that, just in case. Angela says, yeah, I heard it too. Never tried them. I heard you cook them carefully, then they can be eaten for effects, but I would never. Too dicey. Well, yeah, I mean, right. I mean, what is your life worth, right? And
it causes CNS changes and things in your central nervous system, and yeah, you usually end up barfing and drooling for a while from reports I've read. And they pretty much have, in addition to hallucinogenic effects, pretty much like a heavy alcohol affects you, where it screws up your motor coordination and stuff, all those kinds of things that the psilocybin mushrooms don't do.
Allure laughs and cries, laughing. Aaliyah says, hello. Hi, Aaliyah. So probably enough of the mushrooms.
Yeah.
Since we're not a mushroom channel. They do have the word magic in them, but...
I just liked all the pictures that Allure Valor put up with the Amanitas.
Yes, she did. She found a good job of that. Angela says, people claim there's one that won't harm you unless you're drunk, but I don't believe that either. Yeah. Facts are better than other people. Okay. Danny, I usually smoke them or eat them dried. Very interesting experience.
I don't believe that the Amanita muscaria will work that way. They're really a different variety. The Amanita muscaria and the panther mushroom are both totally different than the psilocybin type, and they're considered very dangerous to use, though they are used that way.
Anyway, Oregon is the first state that is actually legalizing psilocybin in a clinical setting to help with mental health issues and addiction. And we're going to actually start having clinical stuff happening here. We're, as a country, way behind Europe. But finally, at least one state is starting to get a brain and figuring this stuff out. So it should be interesting. They're going to have the clinics set up, I think, by next year. They're still working on the foundational stuff, all the forms, etc., rules and whatnot for doing it. But they'll be in a clinic, not just it's not going to be like legalized or anything, but it will be legal for medicinal purposes in a clinic setting. So
Yeah, a lot of therapeutic stuff, mostly.
Violet says, "Oh, that is so amazing on the clinics and legalization. Way cool." Yes, way cool. We'll see how this works. Johns Hopkins has been doing a huge amount of research on the subject. So I think that's probably one of the motivations that's pushed this forward.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, because
That
they have a lot of results at this
Paul
point.
Stamets did
Yeah.
a lot of it. He did.
And he worked with them
He
too.
probably 80% got this whole thing going with mushrooms and stuff.
Yep.
Just his work.
Yeah, so we only have one step left to do on our poppets, and that's Ian is going to put his sister's name on his poppet. I'm going to have my granddaughter do her own name on her poppet, since she's here with us. And I figure that'll actually pull in her energy even more, and she knows what we're doing, so it's not like it's a secret or anything like that. And this positive involvement with the process is only going to enhance the effects of the herbs and plants and crystals and so forth that I put in there, and we're definitely seeing some of the results already. So that's good. Of course, with Ian's sister, we don't have any contact with her, but I figure since he is related, then that would give a blood tie to it and would make it a little bit more potent than just me writing it on the poppet. Angela says, "Are you still doing self-improvement poppets, healing poppets?" Or there's so many uses for doll magic and stuffy magic.
Yep.
Yeah, this is pretty much what this is. These are self-improvement and healing poppets.
Poppet, yeah.
Well, healing for self-improvement, improving their selves in that case. And I don't know. I like the bigger ones. They're kind of fun and easier to stuff, although it takes more material
More stuff
to stuff them with.
But hey, that's okay. Gets more of your energy in there.
Yep. Angela says, "My personal favorites are healing, meditative, anxiety reduction, portal statue." All right, portable. Excuse me, not. I don't know what I said.
You said portable.
I said porting, I thought, but
Portobello.
yeah, I don't know. Another mushroom.
Portobello statue.
Yep, we're having fun over here, aren't we? But yes, that's one of the things. That's why I just thought, since I was in the middle of the project, to do a video about it, because it's there's no limitation to how you can use it.
Yeah.
Just your imagination, pretty much, when it comes to that.
I still say you should cut a snip from one of her little pieces of clothing that were left over and put in it.
Well, it's not going to be in it now because it's sealed, but we can attach it to the back. We put a little piece of her fabric on the back, and then you can put her name on the front. Sounds like a good idea. So Balloonhead says, "I think you've answered this before, but what books do you recommend for people new to the craft? Also, did y'all teach your kids, grandkids about magic and stuff? And if so, how?" Okay, so I did a whole video on some of the books that I've used. There's so many books out there now that I haven't read because I started such a long time ago. But, the standards like Buckland's Big Blue Book and Cunningham's books and Gardner's books are sort of classics. Starhawk's books are useful. I did a lot of videos on how to get into the craft and the different skills that you need to do it, like casting a circle and calling in the directions and so forth, how to work with different elements, etc. So I'm trying to cover some of the things that might not be as easy to figure out from reading a book. And we just did stuff. I mean, we celebrated the Sabbats together. My daughter was pretty entertaining in the beginning when she was celebrating Sabbats. She did some pretty off-the-cuff kind of stuff. Like when we were doing, I think, a Lammas celebration, we were burning the god.
I have to go away for a few minutes.
Okay. We were burning I had to make a effigy of the god, and she found this big, huge pine cone. So I had to make a very large effigy to go with the pine cone, so it didn't look too out of sorts. and we were going down to the beach, and my daughter and her friend were carrying this effigy of the god on their heads, singing as they went down. Well, hello, thank you very much, Allura. We appreciate that. Um, and so that was hysterical. And then there was one time we were on our way to see the movie The Sorceress and the Friar. It was just before summer solstice, and my daughter was freaking out the guy who was driving us to the movies by telling him that she was really looking forward to becoming the virgin sacrifice for the ritual that we were going to do the next day, because it was really hard to find virgins. And he thought she was serious. The look on his face was priceless. But anyway. So, Aaliyah says, does anyone hang with the fae spirits in dreams? Well, I see them with my eyes open and before I go to sleep sometimes, but they haven't come to me in my dreams in a while. And Danny says, Amanita is said to open the crown chakra. I've had some really interesting experiences with it. Pretty magical in itself, a bit like psilocybin, but nothing like it at the same time. But I'll stop nagging. Okay, we'll accept that. Night Wandering Daughter says, I bought the 1001 Spells book and scared a few people away at the bookstore today. Oh, I thought you didn't get the 5,000 spells. I only got the 1,000. Yeah. Yes, it is kind of entertaining to see people freaking out about stuff. They're very easily terrified when they think it's real. I know I've talked about this before, but we were talking about it again this week, the various things that I've done to help people out and how when it works, I never hear from them again. It's just so bizarre. It's like, they want to believe that it's real. They ask you for help when they're in trouble. You do something to help them, then they know that it's real, and then they don't want to talk to you anymore because now they're afraid if you could do that nice thing, then that means you could do this other bad thing. So, all their subconscious things rolling around. Balloonhead says, that's awesome. Your family's witty and funny. I love that. Yeah, we have a very quirky sense of humor. There's no doubt about it. So, yeah, my granddaughter's introduction to me being a witch was on Halloween one year when she was dressing up as a witch. I think she was like 4 or 5 or something. Well, maybe she's a little bit older than that. And she hadn't known yet that I was a witch. And so, we're getting her ready for Halloween, and she's talking about stuff. And I said, well, there are real witches. She says, really? I said, I'm one. She went, you're a witch? So she doesn't remember that now. But, if it's normal, if it's introduced when, it's just sort of part of the family, how it works, kinds of stories that you do, going to the beach, picking up rocks and shells, making wands. I mean, she still has the first wand that she made when she was pretty young. And so, it just becomes normalized kind of part of existence. And then they're more likely to notice things. In fact, this week she had a bit of a breakthrough when she got back. And she actually saw her tiger that for the first time in a long time, like steady. Her tiger actually slept around her and sort of surrounded her all night. So I thought that was a good thing. And her psychic abilities are like popping out. She was seeing ghosts going across the road when she was driving, and it was kind of freaking her out. I told her I've seen that too, because I have, especially if I'm tired. And that was entertaining, driving home when I was tired and seeing things crossing the road and wanting to slam on the brakes and trying not to because that would not be good. But yeah, if you don't have a good sense of humor, you take yourself too seriously, what's the point? Like, the people that take themselves very seriously usually turn out to be not nice people, in my experience. So, what do we want to talk about now? He should be back soon, I am assuming. So you got me. What do you want to do? I am waiting for the questions. everybody's typing at once. I know it. But yeah, life is definitely interesting. It can be very, very hard, but very interesting. Litvinkova says, "Hi everyone, I am so late." Hi, you're not too late though. You're like halfway through, so you're here. That's the good thing. Balloonhead says, "I live with my family and I'm halfway out of the room closet. My sister calls me a witch since she spotted my altar and peeks in whenever I'm reading cards or scrying." Yeah, at this point, I'm so far out of the broom closet, I'm not sure where I put the closet. It's kind of gone. Angela says, "Any tips for ancestor work? I just got some things set up to do workings with my great-grandmother and ancestors." I don't work with my ancestors, but I think a lot of people have ancestor altars, and I imagine the similar things that you do for getting in touch with spirit or deity, meditation on the subject matter and so forth, and learning how to quiet and still your own thoughts so that you can hear their voice when they need to give you assistance or answer your questions or prompt you or keep you safe because they're warning you about something that's coming. I am assuming that it's probably about the same process. Hugh says, "I love cats. Do you have any fun cat witchy facts?" I love cats too, and cats see spirits very well, and they generally don't react to them because they know what they are. Dogs see spirits too and usually start barking and growling and freaking out. So, I don't know. If anything comes to mind, I'll let you know. So, Lorna says, "Good day or evening to everyone." Hi, Lorna. Joy says, "How would you define witch?" And that's a really good question because it really depends on what people think. I mean, when I define myself as a witch, what I mean is that I am a person who is in tune with the natural world, working with the natural world, and paying attention to the cycles, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of energy throughout the world, and can tell when things will be going my way or when things are going to block me so that I can make better decisions to get around them. And at times I can actually sort of nudge the universe in a specific direction or point something out to the universe. It's like, look at this. You may not have noticed this yet, but here's a problem and it needs to be addressed. And so it's a way of communicating with the unseen and making it's a normal way of being. I've always known I was a witch ever since I was little, and called myself a witch since I was in grade school. And people's reactions are interesting when you call yourself a witch because they don't know for sure what that means. So, Lewell says, "Oops, signed in under a different account." Angela says, "That's how I know some of my stuffies and poppets are really hard at work. My dog barks at them and won't push them off my lap to get up." Good. I like that. Who says, "Yeah, I see my cat watching, but I can't see often." Shay says, "Hello, dear ones." Hi, Shay. Jacqueline says, "My dog does too." Lewell says, "Was sitting on a bench yesterday. A neighbor that I never met was walking her dog on the leash, and the dog just got on the bench and licked me. I'm thinking, not leaked, licked me on my lips." Conversation starter. I was in the park yesterday talking to my son and his wife at a local park, and we met some very nice dogs that came by, and very well behaved ones, so that was nice. And some of them definitely wanted to come up and say hello, and they were going like, "We love you, we love you, we love you." I'm like, "I love you too."
Dog next door seems nice too. Rainbow.
And, yeah, Rainbow is adorable, and dogs tend to like me in general. And they'll tell me things. I hear a voice in my head if there's something wrong, which is also kind of entertaining in the sense. I walked into a local antique store, and the guy's dog was jumping up on one of the chairs, and I was sitting on a chair waiting for something, and me and the dog had a little chat, and I says, "Oh, you're feeling sick to your stomach? Did you eat something bad?" I'm having this conversation out loud. It's like I'm not very hidden. And then I asked the guy who owns it, and I was saying, "Yeah, okay," but he thinks I'm crazy. His partner doesn't. It's like they're a couple, and it's really interesting to see how they react to me differently depending on who's in the store. But so yeah, I like animals. They're very interesting. Do you have a definition of a witch?
No, because the way the problem with the word witch is the way it's been defined in the past to me, and then the way it's been not by the Christian church and stuff so much even, but when brujos and Native Americans things talk about witches, they're not talking about what we would consider a witch. They're talking about malevolent, evil people. And unfortunately, the term gets used specifically for malevolent, evil people in a lot of other societies and things. So, I'd probably prefer a different word myself, but I admit to being one. Anyway.
That is true. There is that. Oakheart says, "Good evening. How do you deal with evil spirits entities that want to cause you harm to you, attach to you, or scare you?" Well, one, I don't let them. And that's actually the answer to the entire everything in the question. I don't deal with them. I tell them to go away and leave me alone. They don't like me in general, so I generally don't even have to do anything at all because my energy is inimical to them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The more clear you get yourself and the more powerful you get your aura through doing magical exercises and practices and things will tend to repel the negative, harmful things more and more. They won't be able to.
Well, they can't affect you if you don't allow them any kind of opportunity. I mean, in a sense, they point out weaknesses that we might have, and in personality, character, energy, weaknesses, or whatever you want to think of them as, because it's like a conversation with a toxic individual. People throw out barbs, hooks and things like that to try and generate an argument with somebody or to get them into a heated discussion where they think they might have like an edge or so forth to prove themselves better than you or whatever that might be. And so it's like if you're not prone to having that problem with humans, that's a good sign. That means that you've worked on those things, because you can't engage or be forced to engage with someone. You have to volunteer to engage with them. And so if they're showing up and coming around, there's something in you that you need to work on in order to make it stop, I guess would be one way of putting
it. So, assuming they're actually malevolent entities, not like larvae or something, which are harmful and yet self-created mostly.
Still the same thing. You have to work on yourself.
Yeah. There's
something in you that's allowing that to happen, whether it's a physical addiction, a mental addiction, emotional attachment, or what have you. It's like, yeah. So Louisville says, "Turned out that neighbor lost her mother and her dog, been feeling lonely ever since." I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds difficult. Angela says, "I tell them get out, and if they don't do it, I light an altar candle and get a little help, but they don't come around much, thank goodness." Yeah. And that's it. Opportunity to set your boundaries.
Yeah, and generally, like I say, if you get practicing and make your aura nice and solid, so you got a nice solid circle around you, natural circle, you repel all those kinds of things. Anymore, I just don't generally get bothered by anything negative ever anymore. They just know not to do it, or something about my aura, my energy repels them. And since I'm not seeking such contact out with negative entities, it's just not much of an issue anymore.
So Ooh says, "Do you have any witchy information about hair, cutting hair versus not cutting it and letting it grow long?" Well, there's certainly a lot of anecdotal stories about the power of hair, and that Samson and his hair, he became weak when his hair was cut. But not just that, there's other mythologies where that kind of thing happens, where people believe that power is in their hair. And if they steal your hair, if someone steals your hair, then they can get power over you. That's on that Native American show we were watching. That hair, keeping your hair to yourself was very vitally important because of its connection. Like, not, it's got you in it and it's directly connected to your head, your brain, your spirit, or what have you. I've read stories where people have braided hair and made belts out of them to gain control over whose hair it was, or gain their powers or something like that. But these are all, it depends on what you believe as to what actually works when it comes to that kind of stuff, I think, because there's a lot of different methods and approaches and cultural influence and stuff around there. So Jacqueline says, I prefer to be called wielder of natural forces. Nice, I like it. Longer than a witch, but it's nice.
Womp.
Womp.
A womp.
A womp. A womp.
Wielder of natural forces. Okay.
Well, it's wonf. See. Krista says, afternoon, glad to catch ya. I was thrilled to watch your Poppet video. I also made a healing Poppet. Awesome. Good. Glad that was helpful. Angela says, they say never let someone else use your hair in spell work or it's easy to cast on you, I heard.
True.
I use my own hair in self-protection spells, just a single strand. And that would be just as powerful, I think, as blood to identify something as you. Of course, all my artwork, every piece I've ever made has got lots of my hair in it. When I'm beading and stuff, I keep finding these strands of hair when I'm trying to stitch, and everything I make, I don't have to put hair in it. It kind of happens all by itself, and it just gets in there. I'm like, man, somebody with a DNA kit could just have a blast and make sure that they knew it was mine that way.
That's okay. I have a lot of projects that have my blood in them unintentionally too.
Yes.
Especially making those metal talismans. And
oh yeah,
slicing yourself
poking your finger and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who says, interesting, a braid belt would be intense. Thank you so much for answering my questions. You're welcome, as well as I can. Jacqueline says, haha, I like it, the wanfa. Violet says, what about pictures along with hair? Can they be used against you for real?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that pictures can make a real strong connection to you because then they can really visualize what you look like when it comes to, the other planes and so forth. So
yeah, it's pictures, but something of your body, like
more
hair
powerful
or
than a picture.
finger. Another thing they use sometimes, the nasty witches, they use fingernail clippings and toenail clippings and whatever they can get. They use, if they can, they get a woman's tampon or something that's been used, and that's the highest connection because you got the direct blood right there.
Yeah,
so
and I've heard stories about people going to other countries where you have to be very careful, especially if you're a magic person to start with. If you're in a foreign land where this kind of magic happens, that you dispose of your own bodily fluids and parts and stuff in a way that no one else can get a hold of them. Because I've heard some stories about them being sold, and then who knows what could happen with that kind of a connection with you.
Yeah, it's not something you want. Yuck.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Yucky. Yuckiness.
Balloon has, I just say I'm very woo-woo. Yeah. I'm definitely, people think I'm crazy. There's no doubt about it. Angela says, yes, I can't use blood. I have a vow against self-harm with my matrons, so I'm forbidden to draw blood. So I use my hair or anything red consecrated to work in its place. Well, if you're female and you have a period, you're not harming yourself. It happens naturally. Yeah, so that's usually the blood that I would use when I was having menstruation.
That's supposedly the most effective anyway for
and that's certainly not
purposes.
Self-harm.
Yeah.
I agree that's a good thing not to do. Luo says, I grew up with the belief that hair needs to be drowned, like extra hair you could lose to the hairbrush. Oh, put it in the water. Jacqueline says, me too, Ian. Every time I try carve wood, I lose bits of blood, yes. Who says, I've been making necklaces with the hair of my sweet kitty that just lost her battle with cancer. Makes me feel close to her again. That would, definitely. And Luo says, also drown your fingernails. Well, I would imagine that the water would dissipate the energy It would
Yeah,
pull
I'm
it
sure
out
that's the idea,
like
yeah.
it would be minimized because
Yeah.
it would dilute in literal sense.
Get absorbed into the water, and then you dump
Right.
the water down somewhere and take
Right,
the energy
and then it's
of
been
it with it,
diluted, so it's all of its vital
Yeah.
force has been taken away. Makes sense to me. Not a bad way of doing it. Some people might use fire for some things, but water's easier to come by.
No, yeah, it all depends. Whatever's most appropriate. I mean,
Well, it's hard to burn your fingernails.
well, they probably stink. I've never tried.
I
but,
haven't tried
I mean,
that. I don't think I'm going to, but the things that witches worry about, I need to know. Yes, we are full of things that could be used. So, yeah, it's entertaining for sure. Why this thing keeps moving itself over. I can't see the timer. All right. It likes to do that. I found this. I don't even know who gave it to me or how I got it anymore. Like somebody gave it to me. There's a lot of these nice Celtic knots and stuff.
I remember you wearing it to the fairy festival last time.
Did I wear it to the fairy festival?
Seems like it, yeah. I think so. Or you had it there anyway.
I find it so interesting that things just kind of like come and go in my life. Sometimes I'm like, where did that come from? When did I get that? Or where did that go? I haven't seen that in years. But yeah. So Angela says, burnt hair does not smell good, but as I have incense going at the same time as my candles, it really isn't an issue for me. Good. Cover up the scent with something else. Balloonhead says, y'all got me remembering several years ago, one of my mom's clients asked for my hair after a big haircut. Neither of us thought anything of it, but this was in middle school, though, and I'm 25 now. Well, was that for like wig making? I mean, people donate their hair for wig making, for people that have cancer and stuff like that, and natural human hair is definitely
Of course, if
a
you're
gold standard kind
you're
of
a
thing.
magical person, I definitely recommend like drowning it first or doing something like that to clean off your personal energy from it before donating it. Make sure it's lost its connection to you, unless that's part of the
Shay
reason.
gave it to me. Thank you,
Oh.
Shay. And it was my last
Well,
birthday.
then I guess it wasn't the visit to
I
the
guess
fairy
it was
festival,
not.
no.
I was just like, my brain is a sieve. All right. So Lulu says, haha, fingernail clippings, not the ones still attached to fingers. Luna says it was long enough for a wig. It was long, or it wasn't long. Anyway, wasn't. Okay, it wasn't long enough for a wig. Okay. So Lorna says, your shawl looks great, Siofra. It really suits you. I love purple and Celtic knots. And my best friend Shay gave it to me, so she knows me very well, and she knows I love purple and Celtic knots too. Yep. Thank you, Shay. I tell you, I get so many things in my head sometimes, and other things just go poof.
I gotta figure out that maybe it's my color on my screen that's off, because if people can tell that's purple, because it's back to looking blue on my screen.
Well, it's looking better on mine, so.
Yeah.
Eve
Well, I
Wolf
guess
says
it doesn't
hi.
accomplish.
Hi, Eve. How you doing? Anyone who's in England, I'm hoping they're staying indoors because they're in a massive heat wave. Of course, now it's nighttime there, so they might not need to. But saw on the news it was going to be 104 degrees. So Lorna says, is it possible to protect photos before giving them away? To keep them from being used against you? Don't give them to people you don't like?
Yeah, you can. That could possibly get complicated depending if you really want to do it with the Akaja and stuff, but I would say just drain as much of the connection to you out of it as you can, and water would be fine. Hold it in some running water or under tap water if you have to, but natural water is better. Hold it in there and let it take that out.
Usually that ruins photos.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think photos don't like water. I don't know.
Well, mostly they're digital nowadays. I guess it'd be pretty hard to. Yeah.
Well, that's true. Wash your phone
Yeah.
underwater,
No,
you will destroy all of
But
your pictures.
you can use the elements to cleanse it out and make sure that energetic connection is broken, and that's what I would do if I want to give it to somebody if I don't want them potentially being able to use it back at me for magic against my will, or even sometimes accidentally. People could have thought forms or larvae or something that gets transmitted through a picture of you also, even though they don't intend to.
So if you need to cleanse something through the elements, but you don't want to put the actual element on, use the elemental pentagrams.
Absolutely.
And that will work.
Like if you're making a paper talisman, it's pretty hard to soak it in water and then
burn it with fire. Because it's gone, baby,
yeah,
gone.
That works great for metal talismans, but not
so much.
Ones, you know?
Yeah. So Lula says it's purple on my screen. Balloon has it's a very cool purple, very pretty. Lorna says maybe in a plastic cover for the photo, and thank you. Aaron Jones says I went to the local crystal shop this week and I bought some fluorite. What can it be used for? Depends on the color of fluorite, and I don't have my encyclopedia with me. I have to look those things up. Yeah, and I couldn't find it when I was doing my poppets, which was driving me crazy, and I don't know where it went. So I have to do a bunch of reorganization and cleaning to find some of my books. So
yeah, I don't know enough about fluorite to have it.
So look it up on Google or on there's a Wikipedia. You could look things up on. It might be more accurate, but there's a lot of groups out there that have posted what the meanings are, and a lot of the jewelry sites post them all too. And so if you just look up magical properties of fluorite, it'll probably give you a pretty good indication of what it's for, and then it'll often give you a breakdown of the colors and what each color is for. Whether it's accurate or not is a different issue altogether, but it gives you something you can work with. Angela says, gotta go, see you later, blessed be. Bye, Angela, have a good time.
Thank you.
Whatever you have to do. Balloon Head says, bye, Angela. Bye, Angela, thank you, says Ian. All right, awesome. So Aaron Jones says thank you. You're welcome. I mean, it's one of those things, it's like no matter how long you've been at it, a lot of times you just have to look stuff up.
Oh yeah, you can't remember everything.
Well, and figuring out how to ask the question is one of the tricks, and that's one of the search features that I use a lot, magical properties of, and usually gets me witchy results and not some other who knows what kind of thing. Violet Star says Angela Hart. Named for Angel. But yes. So I'm glad I rediscovered the shawl. Not like it had gone far. It was right behind my chair, but I piled a bunch of other things on top of it when I was doing other stuff. So it's like it got buried, and then I started putting other things away, and then it was uncovered, and then it was like brand new again.
Life happens.
That's right. Well, it comes and goes, ebbs and flows. Apparently it was time for me to find my shawl. So, yep.
Well, that was a good subject. Now we need to...
Now it's time for a new one.
Yeah. Something else people are interested in.
Well, a lot of this stuff has to do with becoming well-defined.
It's true.
Being well-defined will attract the things that are compatible with who you really are, who you are defined as, and so that actually averts a bunch of difficulties along the way.
Yeah, it's a long, complicated thing to try to get to the bottom of too.
I have a problem with people that are wishy-washy, changing their minds all the time. I have a hard time understanding it, for one, because I've definitely not wishy-washy at this point.
I've certainly seen people that they're genuine in a sense, but they sort of echo whatever belief systems or whatever the person they're with has. And
Yeah.
then if it's a different person, they'll act different. And the people aren't trying to be wishy-washy. They're just so easily swayed. You know, that's what they believe in that moment. But then they're so easily swayed by somebody else. I guess that would be the definition of wishy-washy.
I think that would be the definition I'm using for wishy-washy, because then I feel like I can't trust them. I mean, I like a well-defined individual. Whether if they're defined in a way I don't like, that helps me make a decision to not be around them.
Some predictability, yeah.
Right. I mean, changing your mind is one thing, and having an open mind. You can be well-defined and still have an open mind and be flexible. So it doesn't mean that you're completely static and that you have arrived and there's no change and there's no difference in any way in the future for how you feel, but then your core, though, is the same. Yeah. It's just adapting to new information and new circumstances, which is not the same thing as like suddenly becoming a person.
Right, in this case, I've seen enough people who genuinely believe they believe that, but only when they're with this person. When they're with that person, they genuinely believe something else.
So Balloonhead says, I love your stories. Do you have any from the earlier parts of your journey? How did you meet people with shared interest? Was it happenstance? I'm thinking pretty much in the beginning, I really did not know anyone was like me. So I knew no one in the beginning because I was born at a time when there was no media. I mean, a few witches started to come out when I was a teenager, like Sybil Leek, right, and that kind of thing. But it was not. Yeah, there were no covens that I heard about or could find, or
no real access to information.
Right, no one I could write to or anything like that. So yeah, it was like. So I kind of just fell into things, I think. I mean, I knew who I was. I remembered who I'd been on more than one occasion. So I had multiple past life memories. And I came from a very dysfunctional family background with addiction and abuse and torture and alcoholism and whatnot in it. And so it took a while to clear that kind of stuff out of me, its effects out of me. So it's sort of like being underwater and half asleep even though you're awake at the time. It's sort of hard to describe. Kind of like drowning in place, in a sense, because there's something going on and something there and something more, but you don't know exactly where it is or how to get to it. And the first coven, I did a video on coven or solitary, which I described some of my earlier experiences with covens that I was part of. Either that I was leading or that I joined. And so, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And personalities, I have a problem with finding people that are clear enough that I can work with them without getting into weird personality stuff.
And, meeting people was a lot tougher back then. I once was in a car. We had the entire OTO in Oregon, in all of Oregon, in a single car. So, that's how few and far between OTO members were at that time. Somebody commented that if we got in a car wreck, we'd wipe out the entire OTO in Oregon. And I think that was Vandermeer, David, Mitch, and I believe was the four.
Mark wasn't a part of that yet?
Oh no,
that was later.
Mitch and I got Mark involved, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And the same with Frank, so.
So Lewell says, well, there are people simply never developed a sense of self. Yeah, it's true. Balloonhead says, oh, I can see that being confusing and a little isolating. Well, I mean, I saw things that no one else could see. All the time. And trying to figure out how to fit in with a bunch of people who couldn't see what I could see and thinking I must be crazy. Not to mention the abuse and the dysfunction and the isolation that brings emotionally and so forth. I mean, Ian and I getting together took a long time for me to get to the point where I could be in a healthy relationship with somebody. And so, there's work. That's the way you have to do it. So Eve says, so I was wondering if you happen to know how one could become more self-disciplined. Well,
if you read the below one too.
I think most people know the outline. However, it's the footnotes on the application that gets me. Well, it's easier to become self-disciplined if you find something that you like to start with, something that you enjoy. Uh, and when you're doing something that you don't like, it's a lot harder because, it's like a chore instead of a joy. So if you can rearrange your brain to, if you understand the reasons why it's a good idea to do something, sometimes that can help. I know, like in my massage practice, if I give somebody something to do at home, I always explain to them how the body responds to this and why you do this way and how that affects the brain and so forth. Because my belief is if you understand the, why it works, then you're more likely to get compliance and they're more likely to feel better and so forth. But there's no one easy answer, I don't think. Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to get self-discipline about. If it's meditation, start off small and don't bite off more than you can chew, like they say. So if you're having trouble with meditating every day, set aside 2 minutes and just breathe for 2 minutes and just not do anything else for that time. And then slowly increase the amount of time that you do it. So you don't have to start off like on the A train,
No, everything needs to start up slow because if nothing else, you get down to a physical level, you're making biochemical changes in your body that way that have to take some time to settle in. Biochemical changes in your brain.
And if what you're doing is going to change your behavior because what you're trying to do is get rid of like a habit that you don't like or an addiction to a substance, you're going to have the self-generating thought forms that you have fighting the process the entire time you're doing it until you get them cleared out. So on a magical level, like breaking the connection between you and the thought form or the larva, cutting cords between you and the larva, reasserting yourself here and, know that when you get through it finally, when you get to the other side of it, then that larva has nothing to attach to anymore and can't feed off you. And then it's just going to shrivel up and die and go away, which is why it's fighting in the first place, because it wants to stay.
So those addictions try to stick around if they can, well, not just addictions, but the larva.
So Balloonhead said, whoa, probably to my description of some of my childhood stuff. So Lulu says, funny story, me in middle school, I'm in an anti-religion society. My history teacher was talking about religion and how silly it was that people believed in all of this stuff. Started making fun of ANGE.
Angels, maybe?
Angels, maybe? Yeah, maybe there's more to come. So we'll have to wait. He says, I'll try that 2-minute meditation. Oh man, I'm so glad you went there in the explanation. You're welcome. Because, sometimes we're all guessing as to exactly what it is people need to hear and what they're looking for. So we're waiting for Lulu's funny story to end. Somewhere there is another part of that story. Yeah, it's interesting because there's all these different levels to everything that we do. I had a thing. Okay, so here's a weird little thing I did once. I went to college and was taking accounting, business, law, and business classes, and none of those things are things I like. I hated them all. Yeah, it's like they're very anti-me, or I'm anti-them. I don't know, but they don't fit my brain and so forth. But I felt I needed to do it. And so I came up with a thing in my head where I decided that I was a spy and I was infiltrating this thing and these classes so that I could figure out how to take them apart from the inside. I was gathering information and I sort of laid that over my brain every day I went to school. It's the only thing that got me through. I never have actually followed through on the other part of that, which is the actual destruction and taking apart of them, but it worked. So sometimes there's things you can do to actually get yourself through something that you feel you have to do, whether you like it or not. And I also did a thing with my body. Um, when I lived up north, I suddenly thought, you know what? I need to learn how to like the things that are good for my body. And so I started learning how to like foods that were better for me. And I can't explain how I did that exactly, but I did. I'm like, okay, I'm going to change that little program in my head. It doesn't work for everything. Obviously, there's still things I don't like, but they're not that good for my body, so I don't care. I have to really care. Okay, so Roxanne says, I think that a witch is the same thing as a nurse or midwife. When women in the past helped or cured people, they felt afraid. But if a man did the same, he was a doctor or medicinal healer. Okay, so Lulu says, by pretending he has wings, I suddenly jumped and said, angels are real. He was like, have you seen them? And I was like, no, but I feel them. Dead silence. Nobody even made fun of angels around me since. Cool. Balloonhead says, I did that too, the body thing. It is kind of interesting sometimes, the things that you can do. It's like the body needs what it needs, you know, and that's the thing. It's like if you don't give it fuel and fluid in order to function, the brain doesn't work. You can't do anything. So it's like you're going to take care of it or not. So Lulu says, I couldn't help myself. I felt so offended for the sake of angels. That's regarding being different.
Well, personally, I think that's awesome.
Hey, it sort of reminds me of the turkey curse. That's in the one of the chaos magic texts or whatever. The turkey curse is like you throw your hands out and just start yelling gobble 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 gobble, and then people will run away and leave you alone. I think that might work. Eve says, ha, don't we all? I've been very good at what I've been putting into my body over the last few years. What goes into my mind is another matter. Yeah, that's another thing too. And we have gotten to the point where a lot of violent kind of TV and stuff is just not our thing. Some of it's just gone so far over into the other end of things that it's just ridiculous. And we've stopped watching a number of shows.
We turned off the first episode of The Boys.
The new season.
It was just started out too
5
offensive.
minutes. That's it. We were done. Okay,
Yep,
sorry.
not going to watch that
Don't
anymore,
care.
period.
Don't care if this is acclaimed or whatever.
It's basically pornography.
Don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
So, Balloonhead says, Lul, I'd be mad too. I get angry at people belittling others' beliefs or lack thereof. Well, you know, they're personal. You know, it's like, that's all there is to it. Oakhart said, I see fairies sometimes, but people think that I'm delusional when I try to talk to them about this. Yeah, me too. I see them at dusk and dawn sometimes since I live near a forest. They're amazing to see. Absolutely. And that's the easiest time to see them. That's when my sight just sort of flips on immediately. As soon as it's dusk out and there's not that much light, then all of a sudden I'm seeing stuff in other realms at the same time as I'm seeing the physical reality. And Oakhart says people will always belittle others' beliefs, sadly. And it's like, why bother? I mean, I don't understand the reason for doing it, to make themselves feel better, maybe?
Yeah, it's all basically egoic, and I think that people don't even realize they're doing it, but, you know, I honestly think it goes to their ego structure and reinforcing that and keeping it held up and having people have a good impression of them and all that, which is contrary to enlightenment.
Well, come to think of it, people are afraid of anything that's different from them because somehow they think that something being different means that they're being told there's something wrong with them, apparently.
Yeah, and I certainly have never had that. Different stuff is a draw to me. I like things I love things that are different. I love trying new foods, new things. So I guess I don't get that attitude either.
I like true individuals. I find people interesting, and I've never felt threatened by people being different from me. Someone being different doesn't make me feel pressured to change, to be more like them or something like that,
but no,
which seems to be part of it.
you certainly run into incidences like that because you didn't like a food in a restaurant, for example.
I know, food fights in restaurants.
Didn't like because of spicy food. You don't like spicy food, and that became.
I've had fights in restaurants because someone was
You don't
so
like-
attached.
It's like, you don't like my food, you don't like me.
You don't like my food choice for you, that I don't know you very well to even know what's good for you at all, but hey, you say it's not the best thing in the whole world and you're not even going to try it? You hate me. I'm like, no, I just don't want to eat that.
Yeah, it was kind of like, conversation was kind of like that.
Pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much. And Lul says, that's because you have a well-defined self. Yeah, it's true. And people can't, like, throw me off by, using their tactics. Bullying, really. I mean, that was a whole bullying kind of a thing, in a sense. And I don't get bullied well. It doesn't work on me.
For what it's worth, I love spicy food, but I shouldn't eat it because it doesn't affect me well. But boy, do I love some spicy
hey,
Thai.
I can not like spicy food, and he can like spicy food, and that's okay. I don't feel threatened because he likes to eat spicy food even when it's sometimes not good for him. That's his choice. He wants to suffer, I guess you're just going to suffer. It's like the consequences. That's the way they
Oh,
work.
that's so good. Sometimes there's nothing that'll replace it.
Yep. So Oakhart says, you guys' sense of self are honestly admirable. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, being authentic is definitely one of the things. In fact, this week really tested me because, certain people in the family didn't want me talking to other people in the family about something that was going on in the family. And that's got to be like a trigger for me, not having to think like, okay, I can't talk to my son because my daughter thinks I shouldn't say anything about this, and then I'm going to think about it all the time or what have you, and it's just like drove me crazy. So I finally couldn't take it anymore, and I went and met with my son and told him everything. So now it's all out in the
that's
open.
That's the thing with keeping secrets,
and nobody can use it. Yep. And then I told everybody else. I told them everything. So there's no secrets because it's like it thrives in the dark, that kind of stuff.
Yep. I agree completely.
And of course, in my family, I was the person who broke all the secrets in my family. So it's kind of like my thing. Like, I was the first child, first grandchild, first person in the family to be molested, and the first person to talk about it. And then I kept on talking about it until finally everything got out, at least to my satisfaction, as far as I could. So, Eve says, I love when that happens. It's such a relief. Yeah, my inside of my head hurt. My heart hurt. My head hurt. Everything hurt. It was like I felt like I was being basically tortured. And when I had to tell my granddaughter that I told everybody everything, then she was crying. We were crying. We went through a bunch of that stuff, but she understood it, and we got past that pretty quick. So now we're, like I said, transparency is important. What did she say? I was radically honest?
Well, in her case, it's going to be a lot better off for her because she's not going to have to feel, she's going around feeling like she has to hide her issues and things from everybody and can't let anybody know. So if nobody could know, nobody could help her, and she wasn't really capable of helping herself.
So Jacqueline says, good for you, Siofra. Glad to hear it. Thank you, Jackie. Joyce says, I started to tell a coworker about a movie I saw that had ghosts in it, and she said, ghosts? That's weird. So I stopped, because what's weird about ghosts? Well, especially from a movie. Hello, if it's on the screen. They're pretty mainstream. Casper, Ghost with Demi Moore. Yep, pretty mainstream. And then there was that movie. I thought about this like last week or something. The movie with Richard Dreyfuss, and he was a pilot, like fighting fires, and he died, and then he came back as a ghost to help his wife through her grief or something. It was a very surprising film.
Don't remember it.
I don't think you ever saw it.
No.
It was before we met.
That would be why I don't remember it.
But that was definitely a ghost. I mean, there's a lot of movies that have ghosts in them.
Yeah.
Bowling Hills ghosts are so mainstream. We're not even talking the paranormal shows. Way before the paranormal shows, ghosts were mainstream.
Yep.
The Allure of Allure says, I'm the same way and people hate that. Oh, yes. Joyce says there was a TV show called The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. I loved that show. I watched that show. Jacqueline says, "What dreams may come."
Oh,
I know.
I mean, I guess it is about a ghost, but
It is
that's
all about the afterlife.
That's a whole heck of a, that movie's a heck of a lot more than just that.
And that was a book that came out in like 1950 or so.
Yeah, it was really, I think the movie didn't get enough credits. I think Robin Williams should have been given a lot more credit for that one. I thought it was very impressive, and I really enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yep, we really liked that one. That's one of my top movies of all time. Not just for enjoyment, but for lots of things. But yeah, there are a lot of movies about ghosts.
Because we watched that before I was becoming a painter, but...
Oh, M says, one of my favorite ghost movies is The Others with Nicole Kidman. I figured it out before the other people who were watching it figured it out. I'm going like, she's the ghost. Yeah, I can see that. I know that's what's going on. That was fun. I'm like, yeah, I can see that happening. Because I've met ghosts like that who don't know that they're dead. Jacqueline says, my fiance had just passed away when I watched that totally apt depiction of grief. Joyce C. says the Pithers were creepy.
Probably the others were
creepy. The others.
Probably.
Oh, she took the message away. The Beezer says the Sixth Sense did a good job of portraying a ghost who doesn't know he's a ghost. Yeah, that was another one where I figured it out before they told us. We were in the theater.
Yep.
That was very interesting. I thought that was great. We almost didn't go see it because they promoted it like a horror flick instead of like a supernatural movie. I like supernatural shows. I don't like horror movies.
Yeah, we don't like and the gore and stuff.
Whether it's a horror movie straight up or an alien horror movie, it's still a horror movie. You know, I like plots. I like characters. I like character development. I like intricacies and things like that. Those are the things I'm interested in. And mysteries. Balloonhead says, this is silly, but my whole spiritual journey started because when I was little, I wanted to know how some people can see spirits. I learned about chakras and haven't come up from the rabbit hole since. That doesn't sound silly.
Good for you. I wasn't allowed to research or find out anything about that till I was of adult status.
Away from the thumb of your mom.
Yep.
Who probably would have burned the books from the library if she could have.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. She was definitely not in favor of any of that stuff.
Because she's her own subject.
So Tack 1 says, if you remember the ghost movie with Richard Dreyfuss, please tell. I would love to see it. Yeah, I would have to look it up. I bet if you look up a history of Richard Dreyfuss movies and look through all the different films he's been in, of course he's been in so many. That was a surprising movie, though. I can't even remember what I was doing, and I started watching it, and I'm just like, wow, this is different. This is very interesting. Balloonhead says, I was searching the internet in our basement. Good for you. That was how he found out stuff. So, I didn't have access to the internet, though, until recently.
Well, you know.
Well, until it came out.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
You know, I had this annoying encounter with a young man in the grocery store this week. And the thing that was so annoying to me was his such incredible lack of empathy. He was talking about the pandemic and how he knew in his short life that, you know, everybody dies. And I wanted to hit him in the head. I really did. Always. That's it, Jacqueline. She knows. That's the name of the movie.
The movie was Always?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
That is the name. Thank you, Jackie. I'm so glad you know that. That is the name.
Well, sounds like an appropriate name.
Yes. But, you know, it's like one of the things that's important for me is empathy in a person. I mean, that's a definite... Without that, I don't see anyone being a human being.
Yeah.
If they have no empathy, I don't consider them human at all. Jacqueline says, yes, great movie. And Tack 1 says, thank you. Yay. Just in time, too, just before the end, because we're up on our hour and 30 minutes right now. It's coming up, according to my timer.
So thank you all. Appreciate your participation and chatting with you.
Yep.
It's been very enjoyable.
As usual. We have lots of fun with you guys. Oh, Jonathan said heart. I didn't even see
Yep.
that. Thank you, Jonathan. Balloonhead says, I think my life would be way different if I wasn't born in the 90s. None of the things that I'm drawn to is stuff my family knows about or is involved in.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, this getting the internet and this being the information age, that's been the greatest thing I've ever happened to me for my lifetime. I've always been a loved knowledge and learning things and knowing things, and boy, this is just a godsend to me. But then I have the filter that can cut out the bullshit.
I'm thinking he wished he was born before that, but I'm not entirely sure. So Violet says, thanks, you guys. Night Wandering Dog says, thank you. Lewis says, always fun. Yes, we enjoy our conversations with you all. So, all right, we'll see you next week then. And as usual, you can send us a email and ask for questions to answer and stuff like that. Jacqueline says, thank you for the conversation. Love you too. Lynn says, I love these Sunday chats. You're all my favorite internet neighbors. Oakhart says, thank you. And Ew says, this was a wonderful way to wake up. Thank you all. Tack One says, gotta go. You guys are awesome. Joyce C says, well, thank you. Got my dose of magical people for the week. Now to go hang out with the lady who thinks ghosts are weird. Good luck. Let's hope she meets one and then she has questions for you. All right, all. Blessed be, everybody.
Bye-bye.